American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Today marks the one-year anniversary of the October 7th attacks by Hamas against Israel, where more than 1,200 people were killed and nearly 250 were taken hostage. During a 60 Minutes interview, Vice President Kamala Harris did not directly answer a question about Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's relationship with the U.S. and refused to say whether the U.S. had any sway over him.
Do we have a real close ally in Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think, with all due respect, the better question is, do we have an important alliance between the American people and the Israeli people? And the answer to that question is yes.
Vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance says this is a battle of good versus evil, and the Biden-Harris administration is not on the side of good.
I think on this year anniversary, what we should try to remember is that there is true barbarism in the world. There is true evil in the world. And when the good guys are against the bad guys, America should try as much as we can to support the good guys. And unfortunately, what we've seen from the current administration is a lot of wavering, a lot of waffling. And I think because of that, it's prolonged the war. It's gotten a lot of people, civilians on the Palestinian and the Israeli side, unnecessarily killed. And it's made it harder to achieve any real peace in the Middle East.
Fox News contributor and talk show host Mark Levin says this administration and the Democrat Party are loaded with Jew-hating anti-Semites, and had this to say about Kamala Harris.
She's evil. She's very evil. She's been undermining the state of Israel since she's been in the United States Senate. She's defended Tlaib in her comments. She's never criticized any of the anti-Semites in her party. You'll notice they all support her. She's made brotherhood and sisterhood with the River to the Sea crowd, with the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan. She picked somebody as her vice presidential candidate who was friends with an imam who talked about the evisceration of the Jews. And we have never seen anything like this in American history. The treatment of Israel. We don't treat any other country this way. You want to know why? And I'll speak the truth. This administration, like the Democrat Party now, is loaded with Jew-hating, Israel-hating anti-Semites.
Another major university is facing allegations that it has repeatedly failed to respond to threats and intimidation against Jewish students.
The Louis D. Brandeis Center for Human Rights complaint alleges that the University of Washington has failed to protect Jewish students from threats of physical harm and harassment. Attorney Denise Katz-Prober.
What started as anti-Israel student protests spewing genocidal threats against Jews was then followed by vandals who covered the entire campus with anti-Semitic graffiti and hateful, intimidating messages that targeted Jews and made clear that Zionists are not welcome on campus.
She says they are asking that the Office of Civil Rights require Washington University to come into compliance with Title VI by
really taking a good look at their policies and procedures on non-discrimination and anti-harassment and ensuring that those policies specifically address and prohibit anti-Zionist harassment and discrimination.
Katz-Prober wants a task force comprised of Jewish students and faculty devising ways to improve Jewish life at UW. I'm Bob Kellogg.
Evacuations from the Florida Gulf Coast continue this morning in anticipation of Hurricane Milton, which is threatening to bring catastrophic storm surge to the area for the second time in about 2 weeks.
Thousands on Florida's west coast are stocking up and boarding up, but thousands more are already packing up and heading out.
This is the first time we ever even talked about doing sandbags or tarps, and everyone that I know who usually is like, we'll ride it out, is like, we're leaving.
Hope Swaim lives in St. Petersburg, which just was ravaged by storm surge 2 weeks ago by Helene. Marco Williams lives there too.
Finishing up getting all these sandbags here, and then we're going to head back to the crib and put everything up, put some tarp down, and get everything moved out in the garage.
In Broward County, Florida, Eben Brown, Fox News.
More news available online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty Pugh.
AFA Action takes attacks on the family seriously. The enemies of the family constantly employ new tactics to try to sneak past our radar. They know if we stand together, their evil plans will fail. Your gift to AFA Action allows us to stay vigilant against their onslaught. And if you give this month, you'll receive access to the Cultural Institute video When Your Faith is Illegal by Frank Harbor on AFA Stream as our thanks. You can make your gift today at afaaction.net.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network for this Monday, October the 7th, 2024. I'm Tim Wildman. In studio with me is Ed Vitagliano. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Tim.
And Fred Jackson.
And good morning to you, Tim.
And we thank you for listening to AFR. We've got Share-a-thon coming up this week, fellas. Ed?
Starting tomorrow, Share-a-thon. I love Share-a-thon. It's always a great time to talk to our supporters, our listeners. My favorite part, I guess, of Share-a-thon, I guess we do get to meet some of the folks who come to volunteer to answer phones, but I love hearing listener testimonies. People that God has used AFR to reach folks. Sometimes it's people in prison or someone who we've heard these kinds of testimonies, a mechanic who was working on a car and the owner left it on AFR and they started listening. They've been listening ever since. So God is still working in America, and regardless of all the bad things that are happening, there is a light shining brightly through the gospel, and AFR gets to take part in that, and we get to kind of celebrate that twice a year for 3 days. So 3 days this week. Tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, it is Share-a-thon.
Yeah. We'll still be doing the show today. You'll still hear the regular programming here on American Family Radio, but we'll be having a different, theme. We're going to be talking about the ministry of AFR and asking you to call in and make a financial donation. Go ahead.
A different emphasis.
Yes.
Emphasis. And and this show is normally 90 minutes. It'll be 2 hours for the next 3 days.
It'll be a blessing to folks.
Yes, absolutely.
Add 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Every day for the
30
next 3
minutes
days.
of goodness? Wow.
So,
no,
anyway,
I agree with that. The testimonies are just incredible. As we were talking a little bit about this in our newsroom story meeting this morning, how people have blessed us, particularly in recent years, COVID period.
Yeah.
Folks, and that's why the testimonies, what an encouragement to us, number one. But number two, to hear from people and say, and they're telling us how much we have influenced their lives. And we had a couple visiting our Sunday school class yesterday. They came to Tupelo. They're coming to do a little tour of the facilities here today. Drove all the way from Indianapolis just because they wanted to come down and see what American Family Radio is all about. He's a mail truck driver.
Right.
And so he listens to us. He loves Today's Issues.
we have a lot of mail carriers who listen to AFR.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So just
truck drivers, people who are on the road a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. Scuba divers. There's a lot of scuba divers we hear from. So, all professions.
Yes.
That listen to AFR. Anyway, tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, we will be in Share-a-thon. We ask for your prayers for AFR Share-a-thon because we need financial help to keep going and keep growing and keep promoting the gospel of Jesus Christ across America and shining the light, as Ed said, telling the Christian community what's happening in our country so that we can make a difference in preserving our freedoms and our liberty and our way of life. And so all that matters. All what I've just said matters, and we ask you to pray for us here at American Family Radio as we try to do our part to shine the light and help save our country. Yeah. All right, you're listening to Today's Issues. We got a lot of stories in the news, but first of all, Fred, the weather.
Yes, Hurricane Milton. Florida once again bracing for this hurricane. Right now, Milton is out in the Gulf of Mexico, just north of Yucatan Peninsula. It is already a Category 3. So we're talking winds of 120 miles per hour. 51 counties in Florida have already declared a state of emergency. They're expecting Milton to arrive late tomorrow, early Wednesday morning there on the west coast of the Florida Peninsula. So What Florida doesn't need, it's about to get.
Deja vu all over again. To borrow.
Well, I'm
from,
looking an update here from Fox News. Major Hurricane Milton explodes to Category 4 strength ahead of potentially life-threatening Florida landfall. So it is growing in
intensification.
Intensification.
You know what I was talking to somebody who lives there in Central Florida, and we were talking about, they don't live on the coast, but we were talking about the situation in the aftermath of, was it Helena? Is that how you pronounce the hurricane? Helene. The hurricane that did so much devastation, not only along the coastline there, but also, as we know, inland, and still that goes on. The recovery and helping folks goes on in North Carolina. And anyway,
still people missing.
Georgia and Tennessee. But I was talking to this person, and I said, you know, the real danger of what's about to happen with this Hurricane Milton is if it comes ashore, it's going to come ashore. Well, people just got through and are still in the process of cleaning up in those areas, from Tampa, Clearwater, north, maybe south. I don't know, toward
Fort Myers,
Sarasota, Fort Myers.
Yeah,
and so you have all this debris that has been, if it's been picked up, and now it's going to be facing 100, 125, 140 mile an hour winds coming. You just see what I'm saying? That's a recipe for disaster. You're talking about flying debris everywhere.
Yeah.
Dangerous. And it'll just, anyway, I don't know. I love Florida. We vacation there annually, and I go. We love Florida, but man,
when it's good, it's great. But
I don't know if I could live there, given, especially along the coast, given just these hurricanes that. By live there, I mean I could live there as a rental.
Oh, I see. You'd want to be able to leave.
I don't want to own
and don't want to have to pay insurance.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I hear Floridians complain about the price of home insurance and property insurance, and I go, and of course I don't know all the details, so I know some people are going, you don't know the whole story. I'm sure that's true, but I do know that hurricanes equal destruction, equal huge payouts by insurance companies, equal insurance companies ain't going to keep doing it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's kind of like you wreck your car 3 times. The
Right.
insurance company goes, you're going to have to find another insurer because we're not doing it anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
And that's like California.
Yeah.
Insurance companies are saying to where these wildfires have been the last 2 or 3 years.
We're not
even going to insure you. You can't give us enough money.
Right.
We
because
don't want to deal with
they're
you.
in business to make money, and so I was just thinking, you're having. If you just have one major and Florida is in such a vulnerable position, more than any other state, because it sticks out there.
Yeah.
In the Gulf of Mexico and on the Atlantic
And it's
side.
relatively flat.
Yeah. So it's
nothing to break up those winds.
Yeah.
I read something just in terms of nature unleashed kind of thing. Still talking about the cleanup and finding people and saving people's lives, getting power back on in North Carolina and Tennessee, Georgia, some of these other places. I read this morning where the cleanup crews and the power company personnel are having trouble because of yellow jackets, because all the water has flooded into the nest they build in the ground, and they're having trouble. The government has shipped 2,500, what do they call them, EpiPens, the ones for...
Yeah, my daughter uses that.
Yeah, so they're having trouble because they're all getting stung because of the yellow jackets that are out and angry because their nests have been flooded.
Wow.
So...
And North Carolina, it will not be affected by Milton. But I tell you what, the stories coming out of there still, they're still trying to reach people who have not had, and we're now, 9, 10 days?
We're looking at a week and a half.
Into this. They're still hearing of people who have not had basic water, food, any of that. they're using, I saw an interview with the folks at Samaritan's Purse yesterday. They have leased, there's a team of helicopters, private helicopters there, but they've also leased 2 Black Hawk helicopters, big helicopters, to airlift some of this stuff in. There is the ongoing story, too, of where is FEMA. Now, FEMA people are on the ground, but what a lot of folks are saying is that the bulk of the help, and the spokesman for Samaritan's Purse was saying this morning, churches are taking a leading role in all of this. So Samaritan's Purse, other relief agencies are getting stuff to churches, and then churches are dispersing the material. But FEMA, as I say, we talked a little bit about this last week, about the claim from the head of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, that they're running short of money.
That guy. Go ahead. I'm
Want
sorry.
to take a vote?
I couldn't help it. Yeah.
Him saying they're running short of money. But people are pointing out, wait a minute, and I read from FEMA's official website last Thursday, I guess when we talked about this, that they said FEMA money is going to house and feed illegal immigrants. They didn't call them illegal immigrants. They called them migrants or undocumented, whatever, the language that they use. Well, on the weekend, FEMA Chief Deanne Criswell says rumors of FEMA funds for migrants, now she said this, are false. Cut number 7.
Let's talk about some of the misinformation that is out there, including these claims from former President Trump that FEMA is about $1 billion short because money has been going to undocumented immigrants. Also, that the areas of the Republican areas of the state are being intentionally ignored in some fashion.
You know, it's frankly ridiculous and just plain false. This kind of rhetoric is not helpful to people. You know, it's really a shame that we're putting politics ahead of helping people, and that's what we're here to do. We've had the complete support of the state. We've had the local officials helping to push back on this dangerous, truly dangerous narrative that is creating this fear of trying to reach out and help us or to register for help. It has a tremendous impact on the comfort level of our own employees to be able to go out there.
Well, Arkansas
Deanne Criswell, the FEMA director.
FEMA director. Notice the preface, the question from, I think it was the NBC, the misinformation that Trump, he sets it up as saying, oh, lies are being told about you. And of course, she comes along, she said there's lies. But I want you to listen to Karine Jean-Pierre last week denying that FEMA funds were used for migrants. But listen to also what
she's the spokesperson for the White House, for those who don't know.
Yes. Yeah. But listen to what she said in 2023 regarding FEMA money being used for migrants. Cut number 8.
It's just categorically false. No, Biden did not take FEMA relief money to use on migrants. So FEMA regional administrators have been meeting with city officials on site to coordinate available federal support from FEMA and other federal agencies. Funding is also available through FEMA's emergency food and shelter program to eligible local governments and non-for-profit organizations upon request to support humanitarian relief for migrants.
Support humanitarian relief for migrants.
2 different quotes from her.
Yes.
So the second one was from 2022, right?
2023.
2023,
yes.
Where she says publicly in response to a question, FEMA emergency money is going to communities to help settle illegal immigrants. Again, they don't use the term illegal immigrants because no human being is illegal, Fred.
Yes.
But it's clear that is part of what the FEMA money's been going to.
Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton also addressed this on the weekend interview with NBC. Cut number 9.
My broader question to you, I think, is about this misinformation. Do you think this is a time to put falsehoods aside, like the idea that FEMA funds are being redirected to migrants, which is just not true?
Well, it is true that FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security have been spending billions of dollars on migrants. Now, I understand some people say they're separate funds, but we just passed a short-term spending bill. It's very common for the administration to come and ask for permission to move money between funds, especially to prepare for emergencies. And second, I would note But this administration seems to have no problem finding money when they want to spend it on their priorities. When they need hundreds of billions of dollars to pay off student loans for graduate students in gender studies programs, they somehow find it. When it's trying to get helicopters to deliver food and water and cellular service and life-saving medicine into these mountain valleys, they somehow can't seem to find the money.
And again, you heard the preface from the NBC anchor there.
Oh, yeah.
Stating as fact
Yes.
that it's misinformation out there about FEMA.
Right.
And shame on Donald Trump. I mean,
well, was Trump the one who said that?
Trump has been saying that FEMA is short on money because they've been using it.
Oh, I got you.
Yes, yes. So, you know, I think this is why the Biden administration and their spokespeople out there, they feel they can get away with this, and you just heard the evidence of it because the mainstream media just uses their language, doesn't challenge them on this. They preface all their questions by saying, you know, it's true. There's misinformation out there. FEMA can't be doing this.
Yeah, their questioning is like, why can't President Trump stop lying? What's your answer to that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way they've conducted themselves now in a couple of debates where they're supposed to be unbiased moderators. Let me just say that what's happened over the last 4 or 5 years, 4 years since COVID especially, is that the American people are beginning to distrust, in the case of COVID, the medical professionals and the health agencies and the Anthony Fauci's of this world. And now we are beginning to see as well that people are wondering if they can trust the federal government. I think you're seeing a movement on the part of a lot of people saying, listen, we can trust our state government, we can trust our local government, we can trust churches, we can trust our neighbors. They're the ones who are going to come and help us when we're in a jam. The federal government cannot run the country from Washington, D.C. The Founding Fathers never set it up in order for the federal government to run the country, and we are seeing the inability of the federal government. Just say it's, misspending of money, incompetence, whatever you want to say. But Washington, D.C. cannot handle all the problems we have and all the problems we may have in the coming years, and people are learning a valuable lesson about who they can trust.
J.D. Vance was interviewed about this morning. He made a very interesting point on what's going on, particularly in Western North Carolina. He said, why didn't the Biden administration immediately turn this over to the military and make it a military operation? He said down in Haiti, when they had the earthquake there back a few years ago, it only took 2 days to send our military teams in there to run the recovery. It's taken 8 days to get our soldiers from Fort Bragg in North Carolina into Western North Carolina. 8 days. Why is that?
I didn't think that the military could operate on U.S. soil.
Well, they can't operate in a police capacity.
Yeah.
They can operate in terms of helping during natural disasters.
Okay.
Yes.
Like the National Guard, you mean?
Yes.
Yes.
But they don't have to be the National Guard. You're saying they can call up the Marine Corps if they want to, and deploy them.
I think technically you could send in Marines, but the Posse Comitatus Act that I think since the Civil War they cannot fulfill a policing duty. That's the way I've always understood it. They can come in for natural disasters. Or to protect public order, but they can't come to your house and arrest you with loaded weapons, that kind of thing.
But isn't that, not to belabor the point here, and I fully understand what you're saying, but isn't that the role that the National Guard serves? I've never heard of maybe I missed something. I've never heard of the United States Armed Forces being called out inside the continental United States, at least, to do work that the National Guard doesn't otherwise do. I've never heard of that.
Are we not talking about National Guard? Or are we talking?
Well, I've been talking about Fort Bragg.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm distinguishing.
I don't know.
I'm distinguishing between the National Guard,
right,
and the U.S. Army on a base saying, "All right, 5,000 soldiers, get ready to go to Asheville." You know that?
Yeah, I don't know. We do have the U.S. Corps of Army Engineers, Army Corps of Engineers. That's technically, I think, a part of the U.S. Army. So they will go in and do
engineering work.
So that's a good question. I'm not sure where the line is on that, but
we'll get an answer from some. We'll get an authoritative answer on that soon. Okay,
Yes.
How about that? You're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Pam Tebow will be with us at the bottom of the hour. Pam Tebow, author, missionary, writer, speaker, mom of Tim Tebow. She will be joining us for an interview at the bottom of the hour. President Trump went back to Pennsylvania, didn't he, Fred, over the weekend?
He went to Butler, Pennsylvania, the scene of the first assassination attempt, and he went back there. I don't know if our folks have seen some of the video of the crowd. Crowd estimates anywhere, I think it was the Associated Press said hundreds were arriving. Well, the crowd estimates are anywhere from 20,000 to 100,000. This was Saturday late afternoon. They were lining up to go into this event on Friday afternoon to get there. So, we're talking tens of thousands of people. But anyway, they honored the family of the gentleman who lost his life. Maybe remember when the shots rang out, there was this gentleman who covered his family up, but he died in this. They honored him. But then former President Trump got up, and he's now surrounded by bulletproof glass when they speak. But listen to the way he started off his speech, cut number 13.
Lee, thank you very much, really, and thank you, a very big thank you to Pennsylvania. We love Pennsylvania. And as I was saying...
And, of course, that was a reference. Of course, his speech was cut short when the assassination attempt took place, and he was...
In July,
In July. So he just...
That's classic Trump.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up the speech where I left off.
That was a great line.
Yes.
Listen, this is part of his popularity. He has always been popular with whatever percentage of the American voter electorate because he's a fighter. And we've noted that works for him and against him at times because we've all called him a New York City brawler, and he likes a good fight. In fact, after the assassination attempt, while he's still bleeding, when he stood up back in July 13th, I think, and he raised his fist, fight, fight, fight. And so this kind of beginning to a speech, that endears him to his supporters because he is such a fighter.
Well, he had a guest speaker at the event, too. You may have heard of this guy, Elon Musk, cut number 12.
The true test of someone's character is how they behave under fire. And we had one president who couldn't climb a flight of stairs, and another who was fist pumping after getting shot. Fight, fight, fight! I think it's the most important election of our lifetime. This is no ordinary election. The other side wants to take away your freedom of speech. You must have free speech in order to have democracy. That's why it's the First Amendment.
Well, amen. Absolutely right. Elon Musk, he's the man speaks the truth. I think what he's doing there is warning. He's putting listen, he's the richest man in the world, right, still?
I guess.
I think so. I mean, you're number 5.
I'm trying to close in.
I think he's still ahead of you, Ed. But no, Elon Musk, I believe, is still the wealthiest man in the world. But just a genius, and the things he still is. The things he's done in his lifetime and created just are amazing. But he sees the United States as a beacon of freedom and hope and liberty. And he sees the Democrat Party today as a threat. So he's willing to put his name and reputation on the line to defend our values. We'll be back momentarily.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus had these words to say, "But I say to you that hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you." Edwin Stanton lived from 1814 to 1869. He was a nervous, cranky, and contradictory lawyer who worked his way up after dropping out of college because of a lack of funds. Stanton served as the Attorney General in the cabinet of President James Buchanan. Stanton also was a sharp critic of Abraham Lincoln and had many unkind words for the man who followed Buchanan as the President of the United States. He often spoke of Lincoln as a low, cunning clown, and even nicknamed him the original gorilla. Stanton went so far as to suggest to a famous hunter of the time that he was a fool to wander over Africa trying to catch a gorilla when he could have easily found one in Springfield, Illinois. Well, after Lincoln was elected president, he was influential in acquiring a post as legal advisor to Simon Cameron, Secretary of War for Stanton. Even after this favor, Stanton continued his harsh criticism of Lincoln. Many people were shocked when Lincoln appointed Stanton as the Secretary of War following the resignation of Cameron. It was hard for them to understand why Lincoln would give such a high, important post to a man who had continually criticized him and his policy. While Stanton was treating Lincoln in such a manner, Lincoln continued to show Stanton every courtesy. He never spoke to him harshly or returned hateful remarks with hateful remarks. Lincoln appointed Stanton to the job of Secretary of War for one simple reason: Stanton was the best man for the job. Lincoln knew this and did not let the ugliness of Stanton stop him from making the appointment. On the night of April 14, 1865, Lincoln was watching a play entitled Our American Cousin from a box at Ford's Theater in Washington. During the play, a man by the name of John Wilkes Booth entered the box where Lincoln was sitting and shot the president in the head. During the confusion that followed, Lincoln was carried to a little room where an attempt was made to save his life. Into that room that night came several people. They watched, stunned, as their president lay dying. Among those who were there was Edwin Stanton, the man who had been so harsh and critical of the president, despite the fact that the president had shown him every courtesy and kindness. Looking down at the rugged form of a gentle man, Stanton spoke through tears. "There lies the greatest ruler of men the world has ever seen," he said. You know, Jesus once said, "Love your enemies and pray for your persecutors and those who treat you spitefully." Stanton had learned the hard way that this was the highest and noblest way of living ever given to mankind, and his criticism was finally silenced by love.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven, not built by human hands. 2 Corinthians 5:1.
American Family Radio. This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
So we were discussing before the break the question about whether the United States military, not the National Guard, which I know is under the military.
Right.
I'm not, I know that.
Yeah.
But whether active soldiers at a military base, for example, can be called out to perform duties within the United States proper.
Yes.
And because there's, as Ed said earlier, what's that called?
The Posse Comitatus Act that was enacted in 1878, I guess in response to things that happened during the Civil War. And that law states that federal troops cannot perform law enforcement activities.
Right.
That's what that law says. So they can't come and arrest people or enforce policies.
Which is a good policy.
That's a good policy.
Because you want to leave that to the law enforcement.
Right, who understand the Constitution.
You don't want to have a general coming in and saying, booting the sheriff out of the county to take over. That's what happens in third world countries, that kind of thing.
By the way,
Go ahead.
I said Fort Bragg. Yes, I do know it's now called Fort Liberty, but I was being rebellious.
Right. Well, that's okay. but you're Fort Bragg / Liberty. So you're saying, what did you find out now about this?
Active duty soldiers will support the dual status commander of North Carolina alongside partners from FEMA and other state and local agencies as needed.
So this is portions of the 82nd Airborne.
Yes. And they're using helicopters from there to airlift things in.
Oh, well, that makes sense. I mean,
yeah.
All right. You're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Well, joining us now from Jacksonville, Florida, I think that's where she is Pam Tebow. Pam is an author and a speaker. She's a believer, and she and her husband have done and still doing missionary work in the Philippines. And obviously, Pam is the mother of well-known football star and TV commentator Tim Tebow. Good morning, Pam.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Tim too. So,
do your family members call you Timmy, or do they call you Tim?
Well, no, Tim. My mom calls me Tim. My mom calls me Timbo.
Timbo, really? For
yeah, I'm 61, but I still get called that every once in a while. But I'm the Tim I'm the Tim without the Heisman Trophy. In case you're wondering, Ed.
I wasn't wondering that at all.
Yeah. So, how long ago has that been since Tim won the Heisman Trophy? Now.
He won the Heisman Trophy. I'm trying to remember.
Like
2000.
Yeah, that's okay if you can't remember when your son won the Heisman Trophy.
It's been a few years.
Yeah.
But that was
07. I'm told 07.
07.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 2007.
But now I see him on these. What is that? The Heisman House. Is that Honda? Who is that? Who does that? Heisman House, that TV ad. You know what I'm talking about? Ed?
I don't. Oh yes, I do.
It's
I know.
Nissan.
Oh man, Nissan would be so disappointed that I said Honda.
It's Nissan, and he has fun with those commercials.
Oh, those are so funny. Those are so
they
funny.
Are funny.
Those are
That's right.
those are hilarious.
Now, Pam,
but,
you travel.
He's very involved in a lot of important things. Besides that, he does a lot with human trafficking, et cetera. Now, so he's busy.
Yeah, absolutely. Pam, you you have your own ministry in your own right, and you travel the country. You're going to be in not too far from where we are. You're going to be speaking in Jackson, Tennessee, on Monday, October the 14th, at 7 p.m. at the West Jackson Baptist Church in Jackson, Tennessee. What is going to be your what is your emphasis when you go and talk now?
Well, it depends on the subject, the people who invite me. I do a lot of pro-life events because that's my story with my son Timmy. I was told to abort him when we lived in the Philippines, and obviously I didn't do that. So I have a good story to tell, and I speak at women's conferences. I just spoke at one this past weekend, but this particular event is for Child Evangelism Fellowship. I believe in what they do, and I'm going to be speaking on their behalf. They're trying to raise funds to make certain that they can continue on with their ministry in this community. So I love what they do. They evangelize boys and girls with the gospel, and they disciple them in God's word. They, establish them in Bible-believing churches. They do such a great work, and I am thrilled that I get to be the speaker for their cause.
How many years were you and your family in the Philippines?
Well, we lived there for about 7 years, but we needed to move back because one of our children had, it's called sprue. You have an intolerance to the bacteria in a third world country. But God had a different plan, because when we moved back, my husband started taking big groups on mission trips throughout the year. And so he taught so many people how to share the gospel as they went on their mission trips, because that's what he's all about. He's about sharing the gospel. He's an evangelist. And we saw so many people come to Christ after all these years, because not only did he have a staff, he has 55 national staff Filipinos that work for him that go throughout the islands in the Philippines and share the gospel, and they plant churches. But then when Bob could bring people of all ages, I think they had to be maybe 15, and our kids could hardly wait till they were 15 so they could go on mission trips. But he takes people of all ages. We had people that were 80 years old that went on the mission trip, and were thrilled because the Filipino people are so responsive to the gospel. And usually on the first hearing of the word, they ask Jesus to be their Savior, and then he sends his teams to, disciple them, to establish churches in their communities, etc. So it's just been, as my husband says, God's the brains of the outfit. He didn't think of all this, God did, and we just get to be a part of it. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful life. We're so grateful God let us do such things.
Well, I have such great admiration for people who physically go and plant their lives and their families on the ground in a foreign country to do missionary work and to lead people to Christ and to change communities and hopefully change nations. And that's what you guys did in the Philippines for those 7 years. And as you say, still doing missionary work, although it's carrying people there.
Plus, he has all these staff that continue to do the work of the ministry, 55 nationals. And then we have other people that from our ministry take groups on mission trips. So people are going regularly 4 or 5 times a year. And that teaches them how to share the gospel. And so it's all the Lord's, it's his plan. We just get to be part of it.
Amen. Well, talking to Pam Tebow, Pam is going to be in Jackson, Tennessee on Monday, October 14th at 7 p.m. at West Jackson Baptist Church, and it's open to the public, from what I understand. And so people can make plans to attend that event who live in West Tennessee or North Mississippi or parts of Kentucky, certainly within driving distance of that. Pam, what is your website, or how do people contact you if they want more information about what you do and maybe having you come and speak in their community?
Oh, well, I don't do much for my website. I guess that shows how low tech I am. But they can get to my speakers agents who contact me for events, and so that's the easy way to do it. What is that? They can go to my website and they can find out, or if they want to Google me. Everyone does that. I'm so low tech, so I don't necessarily do it. But other people can Google my name and they can find me on the internet, and they can get to my speakers agents who do a great job of handling the unique events that people want to have. And so I'm so grateful, that I still get to do that.
All right, Pam. Well, thanks so much for being on with us. We wish you the best, and we will hopefully talk to you again sometime soon.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you. And I hope everybody turns out for this Child Evangelism Fellowship event.
Amen. Thank you. Pam Tebow there. She is just such a self-promoter that, just amazing. That was a joke that fell completely flat.
Oh,
What I was saying was I was asking her how to get in touch with her.
I see.
And she's saying I'm so low tech I don't even know how you can get in touch with me. Just Google me, she said.
Most people who are really self-promoters would have a web page, and they'd say, "Please go there." She was just, you can find me.
Yes, she said Google me.
Yeah, she's the opposite of self-promoting. Okay, I get it.
That was my joke.
All right, I get it.
Which I got blank stares from you and Fred, like going.
Honestly, I was thinking, oh no, did he really just say that? But because it sounded like you were saying she's all into self-promotion, and it was just the opposite.
Yes, just the opposite.
Not that there's anything wrong. We'll have people
and
on.
it's rare that I use sarcasm.
And
that was sarcastic.
What's rare is that Fred and I usually don't catch it.
Right.
But and there's nothing wrong, folks, if you're listening. We do have people on who have a book out and they want to get the word out. That's just part of what you do. And there's nothing wrong with doing that if you have a book that's available. So,
yeah. But I just want to warn people, if they send us books, it won't be the first one.
Yes.
That we get books daily.
We get a lot
Ed
of
reads
books.
them all.
I do not.
Your backlog, like 2 years backlog.
I do not read them all. Listen, there was a time we were getting so many. There was a time on this show that we were basically having two or three authors on and talking about their book.
I know.
And
we changed the format.
You'd put the books on my desk. Okay, this guy's tomorrow, and I'd be going, really? That's 300 pages. That ain't happening.
All right, Fred, what's your next story here for our today's issues listening family?
Well, it is October the 7th, and it is the gruesome anniversary of the massacre that Hamas carried out in southern Israel. More than 1,200 Israeli men, women, and children brutally massacred, more than 200 people taken hostage. They say there are about 100 still being held hostage, but they also say that many of those are people who have passed away. A lot of interviews being done on this today. Fox was showing some video of the day that Hamas basically invaded that area. It was a festival that was going on, so the people that they attacked and killed were unarmed individuals. One of the interviews done this morning was with Rabbi Doron Perez. On that day, October 7th, a year ago, he had two sons in the Israeli military. One son was killed by the Hamas terrorists, his body taken into Gaza. Another son was wounded. I want you to listen to a little bit of his story. Cut number 5.
Comes October 7th, Daniel is based with his tank crew outside a base called Nachal Oz, as you said, next to a kibbutz of many hundreds of people, Nachal Oz. He fought for 2.25 hours valiantly and gallantly with his crew, saving so many people, killing many terrorists, until unfortunately he was shot, killed, and taken hostage. We only knew, Brian, after 163 days that he in fact had been killed, based on evidence you spoke about Jabalia.
So he was alive when they took him?
We don't know. I think by the time 12 noon came that afternoon, 163 days later, we got video footage which confirmed, unfortunately, that he'd been killed that day. So it seems that in that encounter, he was killed and probably dragged dead across the border.
And that story was repeated over and over again, if you remember some of the videos. Also, I think one of the big stories that Americans are still having trouble coming to cope with is what we saw on the streets of America, particularly New York initially, but other places also, the hatred of Israel. Within 48 hours, there were anti-Israel protests in New York, mainly on university campuses. Campus Reform Editor-Chief Dr. Zachary Marshall talked about the protests that have taken place and are still taking place. There's another one planned for today, cut number 6.
I don't think people realize how unsafe college campuses are for women especially. There have been multiple Jewish females attacked that we've reported on. One woman at UCLA was knocked unconscious. A student journalist at Yale, who's also Jewish, was stabbed in the eye by a pro-Palestinian protester while she was attempting as a journalist to report on a protest. And I believe last year the student who was I think knocked to the ground outside the Columbia Library was also female.
A lot of people have said, if this was another group being treated this way, it would never be tolerated by the campuses. But you know what? The Harvard president forced to resign, I think University of Pennsylvania, the president
last
year, because they remember that hearing, the hearing that was held. I think it was a Senate hearing on this and what was going on these campuses. And these presidents wrestled with the idea of freedom of speech and how far should it go, expressing hatred against a group of individuals. They would not give a clear answer to that. Now, fortunately, some of them were fired. Well, I think the president of Harvard was fired, but she got a job back again with the same salary. So a lot of people have just wondered, how do we get to this point within 48 hours of this massacre in Israel that we have seen these protests ongoing? And the kids that have been arrested for the violence that they have perpetrated on these campuses, they get arrested, they get taken away for a few hours, and they're released. I don't think there's been any serious charges laid against
Hadn't
these
that
kids.
stopped, though? I haven't seen any protests recently.
Oh, yes, there's been protests since classes began again.
Yeah, it quieted down over the summer when all these kids went home, I guess, or whatever they were doing during the summer. But when school picked back up in September, these things kicked off.
Yeah, I remember it was pretty big last spring, or whenever that was. But I haven't seen much. I haven't seen much. Well, I tell you what, too, a lot of these schools have lost a lot of money from Jewish donors. You know what I'm saying? Especially these Ivy League schools and such. Yeah. Now, Harvard, for example, a lot of these schools have such endowments that
in the billions.
Oh, it's just ridiculous. But how ridiculous how much money that these big Ivy League schools in particular, and other schools too, get from their alumni for their endowments. But here's the main thing the takeaway today, it seems to me, Fred, is what has Israel's response been to October 7th, and also what has been the United States in particular response to Israel's response.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? And I think, listen, Israel, we've mentioned this before, I think Israel's in from what I gather, a different mindset than maybe they've had in the past.
I would agree.
Where Israel was very sensitive to criticisms from especially their allies like the United States, particularly the United States, and they would listen and they would maybe even change their policies or at least adjust their policies, that is Israel, in response to criticisms by the United States and Great Britain, for example. But now Israel's in a different place, I think. Israel's in a place of no, we don't care what anybody else in the world says about what we do. We are going to protect and defend ourselves, and we're going to end this threat of terrorism in so much as we possibly can so that our people can get back to living their lives with peace of mind. So that being said, we are going to go into Gaza, and we're going to clean house, and however long that takes, and whatever we have to do it, however we have to do it, it will be done. Same thing in the north with Hezbollah. We will take out Hezbollah. If it means we have to go in and bomb somewhere in Lebanon, that'll happen, because we're not letting these terrorists hide anywhere. We'll go after them if they're in Iran. You remember it was a couple of months ago when somebody had a booby trap, basically for a top Hamas leader.
Yes, it was a top Hamas leader
who was in Tehran.
Yes, yep.
And it went to his house, quote house he was supposed to stay out, and the house blew up.
Yeah,
a bomb went off, and the only way that could have happened is Israel got inside Iran to be able to make that happen. So Israel's proven themselves to be everywhere and anywhere. You can't hide from them, and you don't know if the man you're talking to now. This is what's going through the minds of Hezbollah,
right?
Because the cell pagers went off the other day and exploded. The phones went off and exploded. In other words, they're in turmoil and disarray because they don't know where Israel, who's Israeli informants and who isn't.
Yeah, there were Mossad agents who were in top
Mossad
level.
is the CIA.
Of the Israelis. They were in top positions in Hezbollah. Listen, what Israel performed with these pagers, they found out that Hezbollah leadership was concerned that Israelis would be able to track them on their cell phones and take them out with missiles. So they said, we're going to pagers instead. And what Israel did at that point was they set up a shell company, okay, a fake company, to sell the pagers to Hezbollah. So they got money for the pagers, and those pagers had been had some things added that would ignite the batteries, and they killed, I don't know whether it was a couple hundred people, but also injured a lot of the leadership of Hezbollah. That's the kind of inside game the Israelis have.
Oh, yeah. And, of course, they took out the Hezbollah leader, Nasrallah,
right?
Just in the last 10 days or so. But, another aspect of this, and this situation is getting worse. The language coming out of the White House from Biden and from Kamala Harris are backing away from their unequivocal support. Remember early on, it was unequivocal support.
Right.
Not anymore. They're just using totally different language. Kamala Harris was interviewed by one of the networks, I think it was NBC, on the weekend, and asked about that relationship with Netanyahu. And so you're going to hear a little bit of that, but you're also going to hear Mark Levin respond to what Kamala Harris had to say. Cut number 3.
Do we have a real close ally in Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think, with all due respect, the better question is, do we have an important alliance between the American people and the Israeli people? And the answer to that question is yes.
She's evil. She's very evil. She's been undermining the state of Israel since she's been in the United States Senate. She's defended Tlaib in her comments. She's never criticized any of the anti-Semites in her party. You'll notice they all support her. She's made brotherhood and sisterhood with the River to the Sea crowd, with the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan. She picked somebody as her vice presidential candidate who was friends with an imam who talked about the evisceration of the Jews. And we have never seen anything like this in American history, the treatment of Israel. We don't treat any other country this way. You want to know why? And I'll speak the truth. This administration, like the Democrat Party now, is loaded with Jew-hating, Israel-hating anti-Semites.
Well, listen, Mark Levin is right.
Yeah.
And the proof is there. And let me tell you something. I know that Israel doesn't typically get involved in American politics because they want to be neutral as possible so they can maintain good relations with whoever is in the White House, for example. A Democrat or a Republican, Israel wants to have good relations, so they typically don't take sides on American domestic politics. However, and they may not speak out here, but let me just say something. If you're an Israeli citizen and you're Benjamin Netanyahu, prime minister, it seems to me you're going to be pulling for Donald Trump to win, because this ain't your grandma's or your grandpa's Democrat Party anymore. This is Mark Levin was talking. This Kamala Harris is. He said she makes sisterhood and brotherhood with the anti-Israel crowd in Washington and in the U.S., and she does. And there's a reason why she equivocated right there.
Yes.
Because she doesn't support Israel.
No.
And she doesn't support Netanyahu.
No.
Huh?
And she doesn't support Netanyahu.
No, she doesn't. And furthermore, she is a believer. She may not say it like this. She is a believer in critical race theory. And what's the other term I'm looking for?
The DEI? Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes. They believe the Jews in Israel are colonists, are white oppressors.
Yeah.
That's what she really believes. She won't maybe say it like that. That's why she equivocates. That's why she won't come out in openly full-throated support of Israel. We'll be back momentarily.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Dr. Travis was a man that was full of life,
Bert Harper of Exploring the Word.
He loved the Word of God, and it came across in the classroom. Dr. Travis put in my heart a desire to know God through His Word. And that's what we're trying to do on Exploring the Word.
Exploring the Word, weekday afternoons at 3 Central on American Family Radio. This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Today is the first anniversary of the horrific terrorist attack against the nation of Israel by Hamas, backed by Iran. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says this is good versus evil.
As Israel fights the forces of barbarism led by Iran, all civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side. Rest assured, Israel will fight until the battle is won, for our sake and for the sake of the peace and security of the entire world.
Talk show host Mark Levin says October 7th happened because the Biden administration allowed it to happen.
This administration is evil. I don't believe October 7th would have happened, but for the appeasement and the subsidies given to Iran for the years leading up to October 7th by Blinken, by Biden, and Harris. They refueled their economy. They made it possible for them to purchase arms. They gave them a psychological advantage where they thought they could pretty much do anything and this administration would appease them. They pulled the trigger for Hamas to undertake this horrendous mass murder of Jews unprovoked.
Milton rapidly strengthened in the Gulf of Mexico on Monday and was forecast to become a Category 5 storm on a path toward Florida, threatening a dangerous storm surge in Tampa Bay and setting the stage for potential mass evacuations, less than 2 weeks after a catastrophic Hurricane Helene swamped the coastline. Forecasters warned of a possible 8 to 12-foot storm surge in Tampa Bay. Communities in Florida are rushing to clean up debris from Helene, as the next hurricane is already scheduled to hit the state as early as Wednesday. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis giving an update from Tallahassee.
We need as much of this debris picked up as possible. This creates a safety hazard, and it also will increase the damage that Milton could do with flying debris.
Parts of North Carolina remain disconnected after Helene devastated the infrastructure. Griff Jenkins is in Swannanoa with more.
There are some communities still cut off from civilization. Private organizations, Samaritan's Purse, partnering with SpaceX, flying in their chief engineer to deliver Starlinks to these communities. We spoke to some of those people in those communities cut off. It's remarkable what they said.
I've been so nervous I couldn't do nothing. It makes me feel sick. I mean, it just, we've been in here was blocked.
Meanwhile, while private groups respond, so too is the government. The 82nd Airborne continues to mobilize larger and larger, bringing in soldiers, supplies, and resources for people in need.
A new study shows that a person's worldview may have more of an impact on mental health than chemical imbalances.
The study is from the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University. It said increases in mental health problems like anxiety, depression, and fear are because of what one researcher calls worldview deficiencies, not imbalances in anything psychological or chemical. Alex McFarland, Christian apologist and host of Exploring the Word, said there is a direct correlation between people abandoning God and His ways and becoming mentally compromised.
Well, one's worldview absolutely has an impact on mental health and emotional health. And of course, emotional health and mental stability are very much overlapped. But the Christian worldview is a worldview, I think, that uniquely helps people be resilient and strong through the challenges of life. Any of the non-biblical worldviews that don't really address our journey as a person and an almighty God who is with us and cares for us, they really leave people empty. And it's little wonder that people, especially young people, feel a sense of hopelessness, purposelessness, anxiety, very often a crippling anxiety.
McFarland said the Christian worldview, the biblically informed worldview, quote, helps people know what reality is, who they are, and how they can navigate each day of life with God's presence very tangibly in their life. I'm Bronson Woodruff.
More news available online at afn.net and on the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Interested in seminary but don't think it will work in this season in life? Wesley Biblical Seminary offers flexible options that allow you to take classes live, no matter where you are. At WBS, we don't just educate people, we develop trusted leaders for faithful churches. It's time for you to respond to the calling God has on your life. Take classes from an institution that you can trust for a calling that will not go away. Learn more about your opportunities at wbs.edu. That's wbs.edu.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Today's Issues, the name of the program you're listening to. Tim, Ed, and now Steve Paisley Jordahl joins us. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, everybody.
All right, we have got a lot to discuss this half hour, but before we do, Steve, get into the news.
Yeah.
You experienced a miracle on Saturday, didn't you?
I did.
You watched it.
I did experience a miracle. I guess all miracles don't have to be good necessarily, right?
Depends on the.
So my wife Heather and I, Heather is a big Alabama fan. Roll Tide. I have to say that it's in my marriage contract.
Right.
So Heather and I went up to Nashville this weekend to go to the Alabama Vanderbilt game. Before the game, the band went out on the field. Vanderbilt's band went out on the field, and I told the guy standing next to me, I said, "You might want to listen to their fight song because you probably won't hear it again for the rest of the game." Boy, was I wrong.
There's something in the Bible about that. Take heed.
Pride or something?
Yeah, some pride goes before the fall. Well, you're talking about Vanderbilt upsetting number 1 Alabama.
30-25, and I mean
40 to 35.
40 to 35. Yeah, it was, sorry, and the student body stormed the field. They actually tore down the goalposts, and they carried them outside they got them somehow out of the stadium. These big goalposts intact. They carried it all the way downtown Nashville through Broadway and dumped it in the Cumberland River. And I think that's got to be 3/4 of a mile to a mile, maybe more. They carried these goalposts.
Well, I've never seen. Speaking about all the students on the field after the game.
Oh, it was.
I've never seen so many gathering of so many 33 ACT scores in all my life.
I think you're right.
How that you're talking about Vanderbilt students?
Yeah, and Vanderbilt's a big military school too, so you didn't.
They are.
I think so. They have a good ROTC and.
Okay.
I think they.
Anyway, listen. Congratulations to the Vanderbilt Commodores.
Yeah.
Beating Alabama, number 1 Alabama, as I say, that
used to be.
That well, they'll be. That's right. They'll be moved down, but hey, that is a miracle.
A football miracle.
Football miracle.
I'll tell my kids I was there.
Yes, rooting for the wrong team.
So you drive to Nashville. Y'all drive to Nashville, and you're there. The only time in history Vanderbilt's ever beat Alabama to pull for Alabama.
They beat Alabama. This is the first time since 1984 that they beat Alabama. The first time ever that they beat a number 1 team.
They were 0-60.
Yeah.
Against number 1 teams before this.
This is a movie. This this is an inspirational talk somebody can give, saying it can happen. Don't ever give
Rudy.
Up.
This is Rudy.
Rudy.
Yeah.
I will say that Nashville is a nice city to go,
beautiful
go
city.
to. The traffic can get a little irritating, but
and I have family there too, so we did be able to see my dad.
Lots of good restaurants and and so anyway. Good for Vanderbilt.
The Commodores sail over the tide.
Boy, they did.
See what they did?
I did. I see that. That's good.
They did indeed.
All right, go ahead, Steve.
All right. Some breaking news in the last half hour. Let's start right here. Today is, as you've been discussing, October 7th, the 1-year anniversary of the horrific massacre of in Israel. And today, in the middle of Israel celebrating this, air raid sirens went off. And they intercepted a long-range ballistic missile. They intercepted it, according to this website, exo-atmospheric, which means outside the atmosphere, an ICBM coming from Yemen, the Houthis, launching it towards Israel.
For those who don't know what the Houthis are, is that what they're called?
Yeah,
I've heard it both
Houthis.
ways.
So they are a terrorist organization, an Islamic terrorist organization in Yemen, much like Hamas is in Gaza and Hezbollah is in Lebanon. They basically have the same ideology, and they have been based in Yemen. Yemen, of course, is attached to Saudi Arabia, and it's basically a lawless place, is what I understand it. And the Houthis, have been also attacking U.S. military and other ships out in is it the Red Sea?
Red
or
Sea.
Huh?
I think it's
So, I mean, that's who you're saying is responsible for firing
That's where they say the rocket came from. The ICBM
okay,
came from.
and the rocket was knocked down?
It was knocked down by Sling. No, not David. By Arrow 7, I think, or a defensive missile system. They got the rocket. It didn't land.
Well, the
but
U.S.
the fact that it's an ICBM, that to me, the Houthis have extra atmospheric capabilities. That's scary.
Our Navy warships attacked them the other day. The Houthis.
Did they?
Is that how you pronounce it? I don't know.
I do
How
a
you
hard
spell it?
CH. Houthi. Houthi.
Oh, okay.
Like a D, but yeah.
All right.
I've actually on the news. I've heard it pronounced both ways.
Yeah.
Houthi and
Pronounced
Houthi.
both ways?
Yes.
Both ways.
Yeah. So that
Houthi
happened
and
today.
Houthi.
Yes.
Houthi.
That happened today,
Okay.
about 2 hours ago, an hour or 2 hours ago. Okay. The other breaking news is you guys have been talking about Hurricane Milton. They've upgraded its forecast. We were talking about it possibly being a Cat 4 when it made landfall somewhere around Tampa, St. Pete. It is now forecast to become, it is already now a Category 4. It is forecast to be a Category 5 major hurricane when it makes landfall in the western coast of Florida.
When is it scheduled? When is it expected?
I believe it's expected
to make
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night or Wednesday morning. It's traveling pretty fast. They said over the
Gulf.
Over the Gulf. I don't know what pretty fast means in terms of hurricane moving. I'm guessing 10, 15 miles, 10, 12 miles an hour, something like that.
Yeah. So
we mentioned before last hour the greatest danger. I think Governor Ron DeSantis mentioned this too, is the flying debris that will be created from the cleanup of the first hurricane. All that's piled up on the side of the road for those who have been cleaning up and trying to put their lives back together from the mess that the first hurricane created. Here comes number two with 130, 140 mile an hour winds.
it's going to hit a little south of where the first one landed.
Yeah.
It's forecast to.
And that storm surge,
And the surge.
here comes the storm surge.
Yeah. Could be
Here again.
drastic.
So.
Speaking of South Carolina or North Carolina, the Western North Carolina, I had a chance, came across a Zoom call by some government types. You're going to hear from a FEMA official whose name is Tyler Atkins. You're going to hear from an HHH official whose name is Maggie Jerry, Jarry. Just so you know, Tyler goes by he, they pronouns, and Maggie goes by she, her. You can tell where this is going just by me having to say that. I didn't have to, but I did. I want you to hear what their priority is. This is FEMA and Health and Human Services. This is where their priorities are laying when it comes to getting out the aid to the first hurricane. And I want you to listen. This would be Cut 11.
I'm not going to say they aren't here. All right, I'll give her that. I'm not going to say that. But what I can say is the residents say they don't see them.
That's not
I mean,
it.
what is worse?
I'm sorry. I lost it. It is Cut.
Yeah.
Well. Well, okay. So
for those who don't know what's going on here,
Cut 10. Cut 10.
Hold on
Sorry.
just a minute. Let me
Yeah.
explain. We have, when we say cut, that means Steve is telling Brent, our producer, what soundbite to play.
Yeah.
And so right there, we had a little mix-up.
I was a little like Kamala when she lost the teleprompter. Sorry.
So what are we about to hear,
We're
Steve?
about to hear FEMA Administrator Tyler Atkins and HHS official Maggie Jerry. Cut 10.
LGBTQIA people and people who have been disadvantaged already are struggling. They already have their own things to deal with. So you add a disaster on top of that. It's just compounding on itself.
You know, the shift that we're seeing right now is a shift in emergency management from utilitarian principles where everything is designed for the greatest good for the greatest amount of people to disaster equity. But we have to do more. We have to look at policies and understand to what extent they have disadvantaged communities that had less assets, communities that had pre-existing vulnerabilities in accessing disaster-related recovery supports.
Disaster equity?
Disaster equity.
These people are whacked.
No kidding.
But they're in charge of the money.
Yeah, because that's who the Democrats want. The Democrats want these whacked out people in charge.
They do
because they believe they're on a righteous cause. Please help me. Was that first speaker talking about LGBTQ, and she included some other kind of...
It was actually a he.
that I was listening to was a he?
First guy was a he. I know.
It was a real he or a pretend he?
A real he. I think. I'm not
Right.
sure. You mentioned
Well,
it.
whatever that was that we were hearing.
Right.
It was some kind of, but it was some kind of director or executive.
Yeah. He's a spokesperson, official with FEMA, and to be, okay, in their defense, Tim,
you go for
LGBT people only have 1 month to celebrate that's in their honor, and several days, of course, and parades. So they're obviously disadvantaged.
By whacked out, I'm saying this person is messed up in the head. If they think having a response by the federal government to a natural disaster has anything in the world to do with LGBTQ and disaster equity, and these people are in charge of our federal government, why, you say, Tim? Because the Democrats want them there. This is who the Democrat Party is today. Am I being unfair?
No, let me just explain to our listeners, if you missed what the comment was, what they're going for is that minorities who are disadvantaged and white people who have advantages, this is in their minds, privileges, should get different amounts when it comes to natural disaster monies from the federal government. That if you started off before a disaster being disadvantaged and therefore having fewer assets, you get more money after a disaster hits.
The LGBTQ community in this country make more on average than a straight person.
Yeah, they're at the top. They're at the top of the.
They're killing it.
Yeah.
They're doing good. They don't have any kids to take care of.
And they have a whole month named after them, plus parades all year.
So they're not disadvantaged.
Oh, terribly disadvantaged.
So I just want you to. My voice is getting.
Yeah, it's rising.
But this kind of nonsense just drives me crazy because they're not. Doesn't sound to me like they're told to have to defend this stuff. There's nobody there to say. You hear yourself talking nuttiness, don't you?
Yeah.
That's what I just kind of listened to this again. So again, who are we listening to, Steve? Because I want people to hear this again. This is
the first person is Tyler Atkins.
Okay, Tyler. That's the first person, Tyler Atkins. So who's second?
Maggie Jerry.
Tyler and Maggie.
Tyler and Maggie.
Maggie
Tyler's
Jerry. And Tyler's a dude.
I believe Tyler's a dude. His name is Tyler.
And Maggie Jerry.
Maggie Jerry and Tyler's with.
They're doing a Zoom call.
Yes. Tyler's with FEMA and Maggie's with HHS.
And they're being asked about the federal government's response to the Hurricane Helene.
They're announcing their intentions. They're not being asked by any. This is not basically a.
And this is how they see the world in terms of their response. Not helping people, no matter what color they are, or what income level they are, or what who asked. This do people show up at a meeting for assistance, and does the director get up and say, "All right, who's gay? Raise your hey,
hey
Bill, go over there and talk to those people because they're gay and they deserve more help than people." Is that the way it works?
Well, that
sounds like it.
This is what they want to see happen. I don't know that it's underway yet, right? Or is this what they're saying we need to do?
I don't know. Yes, this was probably the DEI versions of people in these different agencies. But yeah, I think it's still got 10.
Play it again.
LGBTQIA people and people who have been disadvantaged already are struggling. They already have their own things to deal with. So you add a disaster on top of that, it's just compounding on itself.
You know, the shift that we're seeing right now is a shift in emergency management from utilitarian principles where everything is designed for the greatest good for the greatest amount of people to disaster equity. But we have to do more. We have to look at policies and understand to what extent they have disadvantaged communities that had less assets, communities that had pre-existing vulnerabilities in accessing disaster-related recovery supports.
Yeah,
all right, Ed.
That's exactly what we're talking about. This is the way these folks. Now, that second person, who I guess is a woman, although I'm not a biologist.
That's Maggie.
Maggie.
That's right, you're not.
I'm not a biologist, so I can't tell.
Right.
But so she was saying we are seeing this shift from utilitarian. In other words, we have a problem. We need to solve it.
Right.
We need to get money to it. Okay. To a more equity-based, air quotes, equity-based approach, which means more money goes to disadvantaged communities. I'm with you, Tim. The LGBTQ folks are at the top of the food chain. I mean, they're killing it.
Income.
Yes, and a lot of them are what's called, dual income, no kids, or just out there having fun at the gay bar, no kids, no responsibilities. So that's obviously an oversimplification. But whether or not they're disadvantaged, this idea means that minority groups as a whole, not just LGBTQ, but also other what they call disadvantaged groups should get more money.
What Tyler was saying was that there, Tyler Atkins. Okay. I'm paraphrasing here, but this is the way it came across to me. Listen, we got LGBT people out there, and we got straight people out there, and both of them's houses are flooded.
Right.
But we've got to look out for the LGBT the house that's flooded, because those people have to deal with a lot of mental stress in their lives because they're gay and they're not accepted by the straight community. So we got to help them first and more.
That's exactly what they're saying. How absurd is that?
That's what I'm saying. In the midst of a natural disaster, nobody cares whether you're gay or straight or black or white or how much money you have or don't have.
Right.
People need help, and they deserve help equally as Americans, and that's what people get. The idea that people are denied help because they're.
What if you run out? What if you're giving all this money to the quote-unquote disadvantaged communities and you run out? I think it's clearly unconstitutional. The government cannot play favorites.
Right.
It's equal protection under the law. If the law says we give out money for disaster relief, then you just give out money for disaster relief, and that's it.
Well, I could argue, I wouldn't, because I'm just thinking about this on the top of my head. I could argue that people could say, well, wait a minute. We're the ones who pay all the taxes.
Right.
And so you need to come to our town and our community and help us because we paid in. These other folks haven't paid anything. They get welfare checks all the time, every day, all day. Now, would I say that's a good idea? No. I'm not saying that's a good idea, but I'm saying you could argue this from the other side.
When you pit people against one another, this is what you get.
Yeah.
Listen, I think black people ought to be upset at the LGBT community because gays and lesbians get the month of June as their month to celebrate. Black people get cold and dreary February.
Yeah.
A short month. Okay, so I think that black people ought to be a little bit upset about this. Make them swap months for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, we got an Italian month, or
no?
Got an Anglo. We got Anglos don't get squat.
Well,
all right.
You're privileged, Tim. You're already privileged.
Privileged to get what?
You're privileged
all year. I don't even know if I'm Anglo. I may be Caucasian. I don't know what I am.
Anglo is a particular type of Caucasian.
Are they? We're a subset.
Yeah,
I am
you're from the English-speaking.
I am. My
Anglo-Saxon.
ancestors are from the British, Great Britain area.
Yeah.
So I'm a.
You're Anglo.
I'm an Anglo, which is a subset of the Caucasian.
Right. If you believe that there are multiple races, I believe what the Bible teaches. There's one race.
There's one race.
There's the human race.
Human race.
Yeah.
All right, go, Steve.
All right, congratulations to Karine Jean-Pierre, who has been promoted. She is now a senior White House advisor.
Is she really?
Yeah. She's doing such a good job, they gave her a promotion.
Wow.
And then, we talk a lot of, you want to comment on that or can I go?
Go.
Okay.
We
talk a lot
away from that.
about how it's not fair when men compete in women's sports, but we never really see women like joining the men's track team.
Right.
Well, this is why. In Spain, we have Europe's first transgender soccer team, a bunch of women who are taking testosterone, and they are now competing in the Spanish football's 5th tier. They lost their first game, 19-0. But
Come on,
hey,
soccer?
Yeah.
Otherwise called football, or football otherwise called soccer?
Soccer, yeah. This is the
So they lost 19-0.
19-0.
They need to go back to the women's league.
Well, they're not women, Tim. They're men.
Because they've been taking testosterone.
Well,
this is going to be a very interesting test. So they are in the league. They're playing all season.
Apparently. Yep.
So this is going to be very interesting. I may actually follow soccer this fall to see how this turns out. It's possible that they don't score a goal all season.
With the U.S. women's soccer team, the national team that goes to the Olympics, got trounced by a group of high school all-stars.
Yeah, 15-year-olds.
15-year-old boys.
Men, males.
Boys.
Yeah. Boys beat the girls' Olympic team.
Yeah. So
yeah, but what does that say?
I think we all know what it says.
Yep, we do. All right, let's end here. Karine Jean-Pierre, who just got Kamala Harris, who wants to be our president, was speaking last week, and something happened with the teleprompter. I want you to hear how good she is when she has to improvise.
Are you saying that we're going to be able to tell when the teleprompter goes out?
You might be able to tell when the teleprompter goes out. Cut 15.
Remember his number? 32. Today we got 32 days until the election. So 32 days. 32 days.
Oh, man.
Okay, we got some business to do.
Got no business.
All right. 32 days. And we know we will do it. And this is going to be a very tight race until the very end.
There's got to be some.
So how many days were there left?
I think 32 days left.
Well, first,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, first of all, I'm going to, in her defense, if you are, I've never made a speech with a teleprompter. I've had opportunities to do so. I just don't trust them, for the very reason we just heard. But if you are in the process of reading your speech off teleprompters, I think it probably would be disorienting for it to go out completely.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. However, most politicians can adjust because they have something in their mind.
Substantive to say.
Substantive to say, and those things in your mind are called thoughts. And she doesn't have a whole lot of those.
You sounded just like her.
Yes.
The things in your mind are called thoughts.
Plus, her voice, I'm sorry, irritates me. Not all women, by the way. I love my wife's voice.
Right.
But her voice irritates. Not just the policies, people. We cannot listen to that voice for 4 years.
There's your priorities right there.
What were you going to say, Tim? I'm sorry to take up all the time.
I think it's good that the show's over. All right. Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure.
Are you going to any more Alabama games this year? Because they don't want you there.
No, they don't. They wrote me a letter that says, we'll pay you to stay away.
Stay away. You bring us bad luck. All right. Keep listening to American Family Radio. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Tomorrow, Share-a-thon starts. So it'll be fun 3 days. We'll see you back here then.